So one of the things that you mentioned real quickly as well is, mostly plants, but a little bit of fish is what you feel like you've switched to. So, you know, I always hear people talk about red meat's good for you, red meat's bad for you, stay away from pork, stay from there's every possible things you can think of, obviously. But what are you finding as far as if there's science around it between the fish, the chicken, the pork, the beef, and how that either helps us with aging or actually holds us back with aging?
Well, this is a huge debate. There's the carnivores who attack me on social media kindly. I know most of them, so it's not vicious like it could be, but it's a healthy debate. Really, we don't know. There's some evidence that, at least in mice, we're not mice, so fair is fair. But in mice, if you give them a certain amount of protein, particularly meat-based protein, and there are chemicals in red meat that get converted, can cause atherosclerosis. So that's one possibility that red meat is bad for you. Processed meat's definitely bad. The nitrates, there are carcinogens in there. So I try to avoid that, though. Sunday piece of nibble on bacon is certainly fine. Mm-hmm. But what I'm convinced by more than a mouse study even are epidemiological studies. You go to the world, like Dan Buettner has, the blue zones, and you look, where are people the healthiest? Where don't they get cancer? Where do they live over 100 on average? And these blue zones, you look at what they eat. And they're typically eating, if you're in the Mediterranean, they're eating a lot of vegetables, olive oil, getting a lot of exercise, fair amount of red wine. And that sounds like my diet, right? And it's not a bad diet to have. They might go fishing in the Mediterranean, pull out a fish and eat that. Some sardines, a lot of good oils in there. And the olive oil, by the way, actually we found, or somebody else found, but we've confirmed, activates one of these longevity gene pathways that we study, the sirtuins, which is pretty cool, the idea that olive oil is good for you because it's turning on a longevity mechanism. But that's another story. If you go to Okinawa, they have a really interesting diet too. There's a book that I love called the Okinawa Program, where they exercise, they eat not a lot. They stop eating a meal at 70% full. They're in the fields. They have a social network. They eat a lot of plants, and they only eat fish generally, maybe a little bit of pork, but not much. And they're the longest lived people on the planet. There's a lot of people out there that are still working the fields in their 90s and 100 above. Wow. So all of that convinces me that the best bang for your buck is more of a rabbit's than a lion's diet. Right. But then again, I'm not. Some people have a shock when they learn that I very occasionally, or I might eat some cheesecake, or I might eat, a steak. It's not worth living if you can't eat the foods you love. I just try to limit it to special occasions and when I really feel like it.
Now, if we're talking about, stress and discomfort, is there benefit to every once in a while, once a week, once a month, whatever it is, to literally just going all out and going crazy and eating? Like, is there benefit to that at all? Because we're talking about stressing the body in different ways. Is there benefit to just having a cheat day and just eating whatever you want, or a cheat meal, passing out because you don't have enough energy because your body's got to digest it all, and then, going back and not doing that for another month or so? Is there actual benefit or any science behind it at all?
I haven't seen any science behind it, but last weekend I had to spend Sunday in bed, put it that way, after a pretty big night. But I don't think it does long-term harm if you do it once in a while. If you do it a lot, you're going to hurt your liver, or you're going to build up fat in your liver, just probably hurt some neurons in your brain. But once in a while, I do it because I love life, but you can also do it because you just need some mental relief. You can't always be so strict, I find, and probably the best effect on it is the fact that that you can have a bit of fun once in a while, and it's that mental stress relief that it benefits. But I don't know. I don't think a lot of food and a lot of alcohol, I haven't seen any benefits. If I find it, you'll be the first to know.
So one thing that I've heard you say that you do avoid, though, is sugars and carbs. I'm really curious with that, why you tend to avoid those.
Well, I try to avoid them. I've learned, even through wearing a glucose monitor that type 2 diabetics wear, what foods trigger me. Now, we're all different. We have different microbiomes and whatever, genetics. So I try to avoid things that shoot my blood sugar straight up. Now, cheesecake is not going to make me live longer, but again, I don't do that often. But generally during the week, I would try to avoid white rice, white bread, even bread. I'm starting to wean myself off because that just shoots the sugar up. Sushi, unfortunately, I love sushi. That still is bad for me. So the reason that I do that actually is it's clear that having high blood sugar and continuous high blood sugar is bad in the long run. You can measure your long-term blood sugar levels. It's called HbA1c. It's what your doctor will test midlife to see if you've got type 2 diabetes. And that's basically glucose attached to your hemoglobin, which is an average. As that goes up, it's not perfectly, but as highly correlated with heart disease and, of course, type 2 diabetes and even cancer. So you want to, over your life, keep those levels relatively low on average. It can spike. It's not going to kill you. And that's why I essentially gave up desserts at age 40. I say essentially because I do steal some and occasionally eat it, but probably most of the time I'd rather have a little piece of cheese instead. And I think that's the best way to go. Lower blood sugar, lower HbA1c will prevent glucose from binding to your proteins. Remember, we were saying these proteins get misfolded and messed up. And so this is called glycation, and it happens during aging, and you don't want it to happen. It's like cooking your food on the barbecue. It's terrible stuff. Now, you can get rid of it with fasting, but in general, it's best not to accumulate this. So that's why I wouldn't say I totally avoid carbs. The other reason for avoiding carbs, by the way, is, I enjoy food, and the more the better. And if I don't eat a lot of carbs, then I can eat more food. Right? So I stick to foods, that are full of flavor and I really enjoy. I'll admit something that I've never admitted publicly. If I put something in my mouth and I'm not at a fancy restaurant that has no taste, tastes like crap, I will consider spitting it out because I would rather replace that with something that's really tasty.
Right.
This is not an eating disorder. This is just, was that mouthful of whatever worth it? I don't think so.
That's awesome. I love that. The the thing that I'm real curious about, I've never really asked anybody that's come on is about 3 years ago, my girlfriend and I decided to go gluten free because she was having a lot of problems with eczema and started seeing like the gut biome and all of that stuff. What's your thoughts around gluten? And is it something that you recommend that people avoid, or is it something that you just feel like is and I know it's different, depends on where you are. Like my mom has gluten issues. She can go to Italy and she can eat anything. Here, she can't eat any gluten in America. So, what are your thoughts around gluten and consuming it?
Well, I'm not the world's expert. I know enough to be dangerous here. So yeah, gluten's an issue. And cutting back on grains in general, certainly processed grains, is a good thing for the reasons I just mentioned anyway. And there is a sensitivity, no question. You can have it tested by your doctor, and there's a lot of it. The thing to remember is we all have different guts. We have different microbes. We have different sensitivities. And I totally believe that gluten does harm to a lot of people. I don't know if it's the majority of people. I think there might be a lot of people who suspect a gluten sensitivity, whereas it's probably something else. But yeah, it's a real thing, and you can have it checked out. And you can do self-experimentation like I do, because we're all different. We need to know if it works for us, whatever we're trying. And yeah, go off gluten and see if you feel better. There's certainly no harm in that.